Hello and welcome to another video tutorial for Taz McCarthy, this one concerning the use of Photoshop in making graphics for Scratch. In this Metal Gear Solid game, pretty much all of the graphics have been put into Photoshop at some stage. So things like the title screen, the instruction screen, all of the different backgrounds are all created in Photoshop. So this video will explain how to do this type of thing. Here's the Photoshop file here. It's actually one file that contains everything, and I've used folders and different layers for all of the different parts. First thing you need to know when you're making something for Scratch is the size, and that is 480 by 360 for the size of the background to match it, and just leave it at 72, which is the resolution of a computer monitor. We hit OK and we start with a nice canvas. I always like to make a copy of the first layer and then delete the one with the lock to avoid any troubles. And the first thing we might do is make some sort of instruction screen. So some tools you might like here are things like the paint bucket. You might switch to the darker color, or if you click and hold on that, you'll have a choice for the gradient tool as well, where it'll use both colors and we can get that nice effect. Next, we might like to place some text. You can either click once and the text will keep going, but the problem is if it goes longer than the outside of the picture, it will keep on going and overlap. So what I recommend doing instead is to click and drag a box. Up the top we change our colors, our sizes, everything just like you might expect in Word. Unlike Scratch, which makes you have one type of text on any sprite and it all has to be the exact same size, font, everything like that, in Photoshop we can treat it just like anything else, where we can select text within the same text box, change the color, and it'll work fine for us. We can also click and drag other text boxes. That one is there, it's just the same color as the background. Once we've done that, we can move the text around by clicking on that layer first and then simply using our main arrow tool up here. Now, to organize things, what I did was create a new folder and give it a name to do with the type of graphics that it has. So if this was an instruction screen, I would simply call it instructions. And now all of the parts to do with that, I'm going to click and drag inside the instructions. Now notice here our text just disappeared. The order of these is important. Whatever is on top will be above the other one. So we want our background to still be below, just like that, so we can see. Now we can expand and contract this folder here. You'll see in our other file all of the graphics for each one. There's several things, but we can keep it tidy by contracting them, and then we can turn them on and off just by clicking the eyeball on the side. So here's the graphics for one level, another level, a further level, and another level. So they're all different layers, some text, some the black outline, some things like these tanks here, and that is organized into these layer folders here. Now, some little things you might notice from the game are the little shadows on the inside here. Things like that are really good to do in Photoshop, really easy to do as well. So I'm going to start a new folder, and inside it a new layer. I'm going to turn off my instruction one, and I'm just going to draw some quick shapes. Actually, I'm going to do that with a hard edge brush. So I click hard edge for the paintbrush, and I might have a sprite that looks like this. Okay, Photoshop has some really nice things that will speed up our sprite creation in the game. And if we click on the FX button down here, we can get to them, the blending options. In here we have things like drop shadow. You can see the shadow appear just along the edge there if I turn it on and off. So that will give things depth. You've got things like an inner shadow to make it look like it's going into it. An outer glow, you can just see a little white glow around there. Inner glow. A really particularly useful one is the bevel and emboss, which puts a highlight on one side and a shadow on the other to give a 3D effect. That with the drop shadow makes things really pop out of the page. We have things like stroke, which put an outline around something. And for any of these, you don't have to have it how the default Photoshop setting is. You click on whichever one you're working on and you'll get more options. So I can pick the distance of the shadow, I can pick the angle it's coming from, I can pick the size of it, how fuzzy it is. Same for any of these other ones. So I can set my bevel and emboss to either up or down depending if I want it to go in or out. I can change how deep it is, I can change the size, so therefore you can see we're getting a type of volcano like mountain shape almost there. We might keep that one. So as soon as you finish with this, you click OK, and one of the best things about this is all of this will update in real time. So if I want to keep painting more mountains or whatever we're saying this is, you can see it applies that shadow and that 3D effect immediately every time. Whether we paint in more, whether we switch to the eraser and we rub out some bits, you can see everything's been updated in real time. If you were having a game that had a lot of similar things like this and you didn't want to have to set up these exactly the same each time, so let's call this one level 1. Say we were having a level 2 that was quite similar, we can simply click and drag that folder to the new one. We'll call it level 2, and then inside we've got an exact copy of what we had before, which means we can continue painting, updating, deleting the old one, but the exact same effects have been applied. So if we shrink that down and we compare level 1 to level 2, although they're different, they've got the exact same effects, so we know our levels are going to be consistent. When we get to the point where we want to save all of these to put them into Scratch, you probably want to save this file as an actual Photoshop file, and that will preserve all the layers and the level blending, all of the effects you put on. But each time you want to export just one level, make sure you've got just that one showing. And then the safest thing to do is to go to Save for Web and Devices, and probably a nice high quality JPEG, set the quality right up, and save it, and it will give you a picture which you then come back into Scratch and import straight back in. So a couple of little tips there. So this is how on this game all the levels were set up with the same shadows and things like that, and it's all exactly the same and quite quick to do. Each time I came back I just had to add and subtract from the previous one which I had copied, and I knew all the effects would be exactly the same. So good luck and have fun making some really nice graphics for Scratch.